"Ma'am, this is a team members-only facility." The voice was young, laced with an unearned authority. Catherine finished her rep, setting the barbell down with a controlled thud, not the defiant crash she felt like making. She straightened up, turning slowly. A petty officer stood before her, arms crossed over a chest puffed with pride. He was barely out of his 20s, with the sharp, confident look of someone who had recently survived the crucible of Bud/ and thought he now understood the entire world. Catherine reached for her water bottle, her expression unreadable. "I'm aware. I'm cleared for access." "Your husband's on a team?" he pressed, his eyes doing a quick, dismissive scan of her civilian workout clothes, a plain royal blue t-shirt and black leggings, not the high-end branded apparel most of the spouses wore to the main base fitness center. "No," she said simply, her voice even. She made no move to elaborate. Her calmness seemed to irritate him more than any argument would have. He gestured vaguely at the room. "This space, the Warren, is specifically for active duty operators for pre-deployment workups. I'm going to have to ask you to use the main gym over on Halsey." Catherine pulled a simple black wallet from her gym bag and produced a laminated contractor ID, holding it out. "I'm working with the Human Performance Program. My credentials grant me facility-wide access." The petty officer, whose name tape read NAR-OURC, took the card and squinted at it as if he were trying to decipher ancient runes. He turned it over and back again. "This just looks like a standard contractor badge. Doesn't say anything about the Warren." "Check the system," Catherine suggested, her patience a well-defended fortress. "The clearance is there." Rourke handed the ID back with a smirk. "Our systems are down for maintenance." "Sorry. Rules are rules." It was a lie, and they both knew it. The lazy, arrogant delivery of it was the point. He wanted her to know he was stonewalling her because he could. Another operator, bigger and sweatier than Rourke, ambled over. "Problem, man?" "Just explaining the rules to the lady," Rourke said, his voice loud enough for half the gym to hear. "She seems a little lost." The newcomer looked Catherine up and down. "Here for the yoga class." "That's next door, different building." A few quiet snickers rippled through the nearby weight racks. Most of the men kept their heads down, either out of discomfort or indifference. It wasn't their problem. Catherine had been in environments like this before. She knew the social calculus. Intervention was rare, silent judgment was common. She ignored the second man completely, her focus remaining on Rourke. "I don't want to cause a problem, petty officer. I have work to do here. Analysis of the new kinetic tracking software. I was instructed to use this equipment for baseline calibration." "Calibration," Rourke repeated, drawing the word out as if it were ridiculous. He gestured to the 225 pounds on her barbell. "That's a lot of weight for calibration." "The system needs to be tested under stress loads," she replied, her voice still flat, betraying nothing. "It's a standard protocol." Rourke shook his head, a look of theatrical pity on his face. "Look, I get it. You want to be close to the community, feel the vibe. A lot of people do. But this is a workplace, a dangerous one. We can't have unauthorized civilians getting in the way. It's a liability." He was building a wall of procedure and condescension, brick by brick. Every word was designed to diminish her, to put her in a box labeled woman, outsider, problem. He wasn't just enforcing a rule he'd invented. He was defending a perceived territory from an intruder who didn't fit his narrow profile of a professional. Catherine understood his motivation perfectly. It was the sterile, bureaucratic version of a dog puffing up its fur and growling. She decided to try one last time. One final appeal to reason before she would be forced to escalate things herself. "Petty Officer Rourke, my name is Catherine Phillips. I am a contractor with the Office of the Director of Human Performance. My project sponsor is Commander Davies. You can call his office to verify my access, or you can step aside and let me finish my work. The choice is yours." Rourke's eyes narrowed. The mention of a commander's name gave him a moment's pause, but his pride was too deeply invested now. He couldn't back down in front of his friends. He saw her composure not as professionalism but as a challenge to his authority. "I don't need to call anyone," he said, his voice dropping. "I'm the senior man on the floor right now, and I'm making the call. You're done here. Pack your things." He took a half-step closer, a clear physical assertion of dominance. He was trying to intimidate her into leaving. As he moved, he gestured dismissively toward her head. "And I don't know what you think you're proving with that little tattoo, but this isn't some biker bar. This is the United States Navy." He was pointing at the side of her neck, just below her ear, where a small, intricate tattoo peeked out from the collar of her shirt and the edge of her hairline. It was a single, stylized black wing, crafted from sharp, angular lines, the wing of a Valkyrie. The word, the gesture, the arrogant ignorance of it all, was a key turning a lock in her mind. The smell of the gym chalk and sweat was suddenly replaced by the acrid metallic tang of cordite and hot engine oil. The clang of weights became the rhythmic, deafening whump 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 of rotor blades slicing through thin, cold mountain air. She was no longer in a gym in Coronado. She was strapped into a jump seat in the back of a Black Hawk, the cabin vibrating so hard her teeth ached. The air was a maelstrom of dust and static. Below, the jagged moonlit peaks of the Kunar Valley clawed at the sky. The pressure of her body armor, the weight of her helmet, the clipped urgent voices crackling in her headset, it all came rushing back in a dizzying sensory flood. She remembered the intense focus, the cold dread, the life and death calculations running through her mind as she stared at the glowing screen of her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. That wing on her neck wasn't a fashion statement. It was a scar, a memorial, a promise. It was forged in that fire, a symbol earned by the handful of survivors of a mission that was still spoken of in hushed, reverent tones. The flash of memory was gone as quickly as it came. Her expression in the gym hadn't changed by so much as a flicker. But inside, a switch had been flipped. Her patience had been exhausted. Unseen by Rourke, on the far side of the gym near the climbing ropes, a man who had seen more than his share of deployments watched the entire exchange. Master Chief Aaron Slade was old school. He'd come up when the teams were a different beast, before the wars had turned them into legends. He didn't know the blonde woman, but he recognized a professional when he saw one. He noted her posture, her unwavering eye contact, her refusal to be drawn into an emotional confrontation. He saw the way she handled the weight, with disciplined, perfect form, not ego. Then he saw Rourke point at her neck. From his angle, Slade got a clear, unobstructed view of the tattoo. His blood ran cold. He didn't just see a wing. He saw the very specific stylized design, the Valkyrie. It wasn't an official insignia. It was something far more rare, a marker, a piece of tribal knowledge for a unit that didn't officially exist, for missions that never officially happened. Rourke was a good kid, a strong operator, but he was kicking a hornet's nest the size of a Reaper drone. Slade knew he couldn't intervene directly. A Master Chief dressing down a petty officer in public over this would only create more questions, more problems for the woman. This required a different kind of firepower. He casually turned away, pulling his phone from the pocket of his shorts. He found the number he was looking for in his contacts and pressed call. "Sir, this is Master Chief Slade," he said, his voice low but urgent. "My apologies for calling you directly." There was a pause. "What is it, Master Chief?" The voice on the other end was clipped, busy. "Sir, you need to get down to the Warren, right now." "I'm in the middle of a brief, Slade. Can't it wait?" "No, sir, it cannot," Slade said, his tone leaving no room for debate. "There is a petty officer here harassing a civilian contractor, a woman. He's about to have her escorted off base." A sigh of frustration from the other end. "And this requires my personal attention? Let security handle it." Slade took a breath. "Sir, the contractor. She has a Valkyrie tattoo on her neck." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It stretched for 3, 4, 5 seconds. When the voice came back, all traces of annoyance were gone. It was replaced by a tone of cold, sharp alarm. "I'm on my way." Inside the command building of the Naval Special Warfare Center, the base commander, a captain with 4 broad stripes on his sleeve, ended the call. His face was a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. He looked at the 2 visiting admirals in his office, his mind racing. "Gentlemen, you'll have to excuse me. A critical personnel issue has just come to my attention." He strode out of his office, his aide nearly having to run to keep up. "Sir, what's going on?" "Get me the access logs for the Warren for the last hour. Find me a female contractor who signed in this morning. Name, now," he barked. The aide's fingers flew across a keyboard. "Phillips, Catherine, sir. Contractor, Human Performance Program." The commander moved to his own secure terminal. He typed the name into a global special operations database. The security clearance required for the search was higher than his aide possessed. The screen flickered and a file appeared. It was 90% blacked out, redacted into oblivion. But the parts that were visible made the commander's stomach clench. He saw header slugs for classified programs. Atos, Spartan Fury, Talon Claw. He saw a list of commendations, most of them coded, but one line of text stood out in stark, unbelievable clarity. Silver Star, 3rd Oak Leaf Cluster. Below that, a single chilling billet description. Direct Support SIGINT Analyst, Task Force Neptune. Task Force Neptune. The formal classified name for the unit popularly known as SEAL Team 6. The commander stood up so fast his chair rolled back and hit the wall. "Get my command, Master Chief. Tell him to meet me at the car 5 minutes ago. We are going to the Warren. Move." Back in the gym, Rourke felt emboldened by Catherine's continued silence. He mistook her control for submission. He had won. He had asserted his authority and put the civilian in her place. He decided to deliver the final crushing blow. "All right, I've had enough of this," he announced, puffing out his chest. "You've been asked to leave a restricted facility and refused. You're misrepresenting yourself, and for all I know, that ID is fake. That constitutes a security breach." He pulled out his own phone. "I'm calling base security. They can sort this out. We'll have your credentials revoked permanently. You're lucky if you don't face federal charges for fraudulent wear of a military symbol." He was making it all up as he went, a fantasy of power and procedure. This was the ultimate overreach, the step from which there was no walking back. He was about to dial when the double doors to the gym slammed open, hitting the rubber stoppers on the wall with a loud bang that echoed through the vast space. Every head in the gym snapped toward the entrance. The casual, sweat-soaked atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a sudden, rigid tension. Standing in the doorway was the base commander himself, his face like a thundercloud. On his collar, the silver eagles of a captain glinted under the harsh fluorescent lights. Flanking him were his command master chief, a man whose stern face looked like it had been carved from granite, and a sharp-looking female lieutenant commander holding a tablet. The chatter and clanging of weights died instantly. The silence was absolute. The three officers strode onto the gym floor, their polished boots making crisp, authoritative sounds on the rubber matting. The operators, some shirtless, some in the middle of a lift, froze in place. A few instinctively moved toward a position of attention. The commander's eyes scanned the room, cold and furious. They passed over Rourke without a hint of recognition and landed squarely on Catherine. Her back was to him, but she had stopped what she was doing, sensing the dramatic shift in the room's energy. The commander, the master chief, and the lieutenant commander did not slow down. They walked with a singular purpose, a straight, unwavering line across the gym floor, directly toward the confrontation at the deadlift platform. Rourke's jaw went slack. His phone slipped from his suddenly numb fingers and clattered onto the floor. The commander stopped precisely 3 feet in front of Catherine Phillips. She turned to face him, her expression calm, neutral. He was the highest-ranking officer on the entire base, a man whose arrival signified either a major crisis or a major ceremony. He did not speak. Instead, in the dead silent gym, in front of dozens of the world's most elite warriors, the captain snapped his heels together and brought his right hand up in a salute so sharp, so precise, it seemed to cut the air. He held it there, his gaze locked on Catherine, his expression one of profound and unmistakable respect. A wave of confusion and shock rippled through the onlookers. Operators exchanged bewildered glances. Rourke looked as if he had been struck by lightning. A captain does not salute a civilian. It was a violation of every protocol, a reversal of the entire military power structure. After a moment that stretched into an eternity, Catherine gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. The commander dropped his salute. "Miss Phillips," he said, his voice booming with a formality that felt utterly alien in the casual setting of the gym. "On behalf of my command, I must offer my deepest and most sincere apologies for the welcome you have received here today. There is no excuse for it." He then turned, his body language shifting from respect for her to utter fury for the rest of the room. His eyes found Rourke, and the petty officer flinched as if he had been physically struck. "For those of you who are unclear," the commander's voice echoed off the steel racks, "let me provide some education." He gestured toward Catherine. "This is Catherine Phillips. She is not a spouse. She is not lost. She is a foundational part of the human performance program that is going to make every single one of you more lethal and more survivable downrange." He took a step forward, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intense. "But that is the least important thing you should know about her. Before she was a contractor, she served, and some of you, whether you know it or not, owe her your lives." He looked at the small black wing tattooed on her neck. "You see this ink? Petty Officer Rourke seems to believe it's a fashion accessory. Let me assure you, it is not. That is a Valkyrie wing. It was earned. It was earned in a place most of you have only read about in after-action reports." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. During Operation Spartan Fury, Miss Phillips was the lead SIGINT analyst attached directly to Task Force Neptune. For 18 months, she didn't just sit on a faux B. She went out on every single raid right alongside the assaulters. On the night of August 11th in the Kunar Valley, when Chief Petty Officer Marcus Miller and his entire team were pinned down in a 3-sided ambush, when their primary and secondary comms were being jammed by enemy repeaters, they were blind and they were about to be overrun. The commander's gaze swept the room. Everyone knew the story of Miller's team. It was a legendary tale of survival against impossible odds. The person who saved them wasn't a drone or a jet. It was Miss Phillips. She was circling overhead in a Black Hawk, under heavy ground fire, with nothing but a ruggedized laptop. While enemy rounds were punching through the fuselage of her helicopter, she isolated the enemy's jamming frequency, located their transmitter, and then used the back chatter from their own radios to triangulate the enemy mortar position that was walking rounds in on Chief Miller's men. She did it in under 90 seconds. Her call for fire was the one that saved them all. She is credited, on her still classified record, with 3 Silver Star medals for her actions with the teams. The silence in the gym was now so profound it felt like a physical pressure. The operators stared at Catherine, their expressions transformed from curiosity and suspicion to something approaching awe. They were looking at a ghost, a legend from their own violent folklore, made real. Rourke's face was chalk white, a mask of pure, sickening humiliation. The commander turned his ice-cold gaze back to the young petty officer. You, Petty Officer Rourke, did not see a quiet professional. You saw a woman where you didn't expect one. You didn't check the regulations. You invented your own. You didn't seek to clarify. You sought to humiliate. You have failed to live up to the very first tenet of our ethos: be a quiet professional. You brought shame on yourself in this command. We will be discussing your future in my office at 1300. Be there. He then faced Catherine again, his expression softening. Miss Phillips, again I am truly sorry. Catherine finally spoke, her voice still quiet, yet it carried across the entire gym. Commander, thank you. But there's no need to apologize for having high standards. The standards should be hard. They're what make this place what it is. She looked briefly at Rourke, not with anger but with a clinical directness. They just have to be applied to everyone. Fairly, that's all. Her words hung in the air, a simple, powerful lesson in integrity. As she said them, another memory flashed, sharper this time. The origin of the tattoo. It wasn't in a sterile tattoo parlor in Virginia Beach. It was in a dusty makeshift tent at a forward operating base. She was surrounded by the bearded, exhausted but living members of Miller's team. Miller himself, his arm in a sling, was holding a burnt piece of wood. With a piece of charcoal, he had sketched the stylized wing. He'd held it up for her to see. The old Norsemen believed the Valkyries were the goddesses who flew over the battlefield and chose who lived and who died, he'd said, his voice rough with emotion. That night, you were our Valkyrie. You chose us. The whole team had gotten the tattoo that week, from a medic with a makeshift needle and a bottle of ink. It was a bond sealed in blood, fire, and gratitude. The fallout was swift and decisive. Petty Officer Rourke was not kicked out of the teams, but his path became significantly harder. He and his friend were formally counseled, and their next several weekends were spent not on leave, but in remedial training. They were tasked with preparing and delivering a detailed presentation to all the new trainees at BID/on the history and critical contributions of female enablers and direct support personnel in special operations, with Catherine Phillips' declassified actions as the centerpiece. The commander also instituted an immediate change to protocol. A new non-negotiable electronic check-in system was installed at the entrance to the Warren. Every single person from the newest operator to the commander himself was required to scan their ID card. The screen would flash green for access or red for denial. There was no room for interpretation, no space for bias. The standard was now the standard, for everyone. A week later, Catherine was sitting at a small table outside the base coffee shop, reviewing data on a tablet. She saw a figure approach, hesitant. It was Rourke. He was in his service uniform, looking nervous and profoundly humbled. He stopped in front of her table and stood at a rigid position of attention. Ma'am, he began, his voice quiet, stripped of all its former arrogance. I wanted to apologize, in person. What I did was inexcusable. There's no reason for it. I was wrong and I am truly sorry for the disrespect I showed you. Catherine looked up from her tablet. She studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly, closing the device. Thank you, Petty Officer. I accept your apology. I'm undergoing retraining, ma'am, he continued, as if needing to prove his remorse. Learning the history I should have already known. Learning about the contributions of people like you. Catherine gestured to the empty chair across from her. Sit down, Rourke. He hesitated, then sat, perching on the edge of the seat as if it might electrocute him. You're a good operator, she said, and he looked up, surprised. You're strong, you're confident. You made it through the pipeline. That's not nothing, but your vision is narrow. You see the trigger puller, the door kicker, and you think that's the whole machine. It's not. There's a whole network of people. Analysts, logisticians, medics, pilots, communicators holding that machine together. You don't have to see them all, but you have to respect that they're there. She leaned forward slightly. Your lesson here isn't about me. It's about your own assumptions. From now on, don't look at the person. Look at their actions, at their skill, at their professionalism. Judge the substance, not the packaging it comes in. If you can do that, you'll not only be a better operator, you'll be a better leader. Rourke sat there, taking it all in. For the first time, he wasn't seeing the woman who had invaded his space. He was seeing a mentor, a quiet, unassuming hero. I will, ma'am, he said, his voice filled with a new, genuine conviction. I promise. Catherine gave a small smile. Good, now go on. We both have work to do. If you were inspired by Catherine's story, please like and share this video. Subscribe to She Chose Valor to honor the service of all our veterans, and for more stories of the incredible women who serve in uniform,